Unexpected insights. 7. Amazing ways. Older women transform conversations at medical appointments. Clara sat in her living room, surrounded by stacks of medical files and pamphlets, an all too familiar scene for her. She'd spent years caring for others, advocating for her husband during his battle with cancer, all while navigating the complex world of healthcare. Now, at 68, she felt increasingly invisible. Each medical appointment blurred into the next, where her insights faded into hushed tones, drowned out by the younger voices in the room. Today's appointment was different. A recent health scare had rattled her, reigniting the fire within. She sought clarity, an empowerment that felt just out of reach. "Mom, are you sure you want to go alone?" Lisa asked, concern shadowing her features. The love and skepticism in her daughter's eyes churned inside Clara, creating a storm of determination mingled with fear. "I've been to so many appointments. I know what to expect," Clara replied, her hand shaking slightly as she adjusted her glasses. Yet inside, doubt crept in. Would she be heard this time? Could she wield her experience as a weapon against dismissal? As they drove, her mind raced. What if she didn't get the opportunity to speak? The clinical setting felt like a cage where only a select few could chirp like canaries. She longed for her voice to echo, as it once did, to have it carry the weight of wisdom earned through advocating for her husband's care. Yet as memories flooded in, a sense of dread also loomed. Fear of being perceived as just another difficult patient. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Inside the sterile exam room, Clara's heart raced. The air was thick with tension. Dr. Stevens entered, young and brimming with confidence, but her confidence threatened to squash Clara's. He dove into clinical jargon that felt like a tidal wave, and Clara suddenly felt adrift, her thoughts scattering like leaves in the wind. When she attempted to share her perspective on her treatment, he interrupted. "We know what's best." The dismissal struck her hard, threatening to dash the flicker of determination that had ignited earlier. In this moment, she ultimately felt the weight of all women who felt unseen or unheard in the very spaces meant for their care. Clara clenched her fists, feeling the silent support of the other women in the waiting room, their shared glances urging her on. What was she doing? Why was she hesitating? The tension in her muscles grew, and she could almost hear the echoes of their stories intertwining with her own. In that moment, Clara resolved. Her voice would rise above the din. "Your education may inform your decisions, but my experiences tell a different story," she declared, her voice shaking yet unwavering. The pause that ensued echoed with unease until Clara became acutely aware of the heavy silence enveloping them. She felt a spark, a sense of solidarity igniting in the room, rousing her determination from a mere flicker to a blazing fire. Yet, as the moment lingered, Clara couldn't shake the question that lay heavy in the air. How far would she go to reclaim her voice? And what consequences might await her in this journey towards empowerment, a path tangled with uncertainty and the fear of rejection? The world of healthcare clamored for the wisdom born from experience, and as she explored her resolve, she braced herself for the battles ahead. The struggle had only just begun, and Clara was prepared to face it head-on, one conversation at a time. Clara felt the weight of her declaration hang in the air, almost as heavy as her uncertainty. Dr. Stevens narrowed his eyes, momentarily caught off guard as he assessed the source of this unexpected resistance. The air crackled with tension, a silent battle brewing between the doctor's authority and Clara's hard-won authority as a patient. A flicker of recognition sparked in his gaze, but instead of yielding, a defensive posture enveloped him. Experience is subjective. We have protocols for a reason, he retorted, shaking his head slightly, as if dismissing her as an overzealous amateur. His voice dripped with condescension, a familiar tone that Clara had encountered too often. Confronted by this dismissal, she felt an involuntary heat creep up her neck. Doubt threatened to surface again, yet Clara forced herself to breathe deeply, willing the heat down. No, she countered firmly, standing her ground, the revelation of her own powerful presence washing over her. Experience informs perspective. I have a right to be involved in my care, and I demand that you hear me. Each word brought her closer to the clarity she sought. Clara recognized that she was not just advocating for herself, but also for countless women who had remained silent in similar circumstances. As she spoke, the walls of the room faded, leaving only their exchange, a space where negotiation was no longer in Dr. Stevens's control. Clara could sense the others outside the room watching, their hopes buoyed by her defiance. Dr. Stevens shifted uneasily, now aware of not just her, but the collection of stories waiting to be acknowledged. Clara pressed on, her thoughts crystallizing into a plan of sorts. Perhaps she'd create a document detailing her concerns, outlining her journey in the healthcare maze, delivering it to the doctor as a tangible piece of her experience. It could serve as a springboard toward a more collaborative relationship. After a brief standoff, he relented, albeit reluctantly. We can discuss this more thoroughly, but you have to understand. I'm more than just another patient, Clara interrupted, her voice rising with renewed conviction. Conversations should be two-way streets, not lectures. She felt something shift within herself as she watched his demeanor falter. With that small victory, Clara sensed within herself a burgeoning strength she hadn't fully acknowledged before. The tides were turning. No longer would she be handed a script of health and illness. She would not play the role of an invisible ghost in her own narrative. As the appointment progressed, Clara actively engaged, reshaping questions with precision, ensuring her voice resonated clearly and confidently. Each answer she received from Dr. Stevens no longer filled her with dread, but provided clarity. For the first time, she felt like a participant in her healthcare journey. Emerging from the exam room, Clara's heart raced, not from fear, but exhilaration. She shared a knowing smile with Lisa, who waited anxiously outside. Whatever happens next, I'm ready. Clara spoke, footsteps steadier as she left the clinical space behind. However, the thought lingered. Could one conversation truly shift the dynamics of her healthcare experience? The stakes were high. If misunderstanding lingered, her efforts might crumble. As she considered the long path ahead, conversations yet to be transformed, she felt a surge of excitement mixed with trepidation. The next battle loomed on the horizon. Her follow-up appointment was just 2 weeks away. Clara had to be ready, not just for herself, but for all those women who were still waiting for their voices to be heard. How could she prepare for her next confrontation, and perhaps more critically, could she build allies within this unfinished journey? Clara's mind raced as she navigated the bustling streets after leaving the clinic. The adrenaline from her earlier encounter surged through her, tinting her thoughts with possibility. The noise of traffic blurred into a dull roar, yet her internal dialogue grew clearer. 2 weeks loomed ahead, an expanse of time that felt both daunting and brimming with potential. She couldn't afford to squander the momentum she had sparked. Determined to channel her newfound assertiveness, Clara took a single concrete step forward. She resolved to research. In the next few days, late nights turned into quiet investigations, her eager fingers tapping relentlessly on the keyboard. Health forums, academic articles, and personal testimonies filled her screen. This was more than just information. It was empowerment. Each story she absorbed, that of a woman challenging prescribed narratives, of finding strength in vulnerability, drew immediate parallels to her own. Clara realized she was not alone in her fight. She collected anecdotes about women transforming healthcare conversations, each tale a thread woven into a bigger fabric of change. In her quest, she stumbled upon a support group that met monthly. What had started as a perception of isolation now shifted into a network of shared wisdom. Clara registered for the next meeting, understanding that allyship would fortify her confidence. If she could tap into a collective force, she could redefine conversations not just for herself, but for others. Brimming with ideas, Clara initiated her first draft of the document she intended to present to Dr. Stevens. It began with her story, an unfiltered narrative detailing her experiences with healthcare that felt incomplete and impersonal. The tone shifted, however, as she began listing her insights and questions. It wasn't merely about her health. It was a manifesto for equity, reflecting the voices of all women who felt unheard. Each paragraph crystallized her thoughts, bringing forth a robust outline of her demands for shared dialogues in medical settings. Clara found herself returning to the journalistic techniques she'd learned in college, producing a piece that felt motivated and urgent. Writing forced her to analyze and clarify her thoughts. With every edit, she discovered strengths she had long forgotten. Days morphed into manageable routines. Between her writing sessions, she practiced vocalizing her thoughts in front of the mirror, figuring out how to maintain eye contact, project her voice, and navigate the subtleties of conversational dynamics. It felt daunting, but exhilarating, the thrill of rehearsing for a performance that could change the trajectory of her healthcare experiences. As the day of her follow-up appointment approached, Clara made a meticulous plan. She would enter the office with tangible documentation at hand, armed with insights gathered alongside newfound allies, prepared to dismantle any lingering condescension. It was imperative to return to Dr. Stevens's office as the change agent she was destined to become. Yet as the night before her appointment fell, a familiar twinge of doubt gnawed at her. What if Dr. Stevens dismissed her again? What if he was unyielding? Clara's heart raced with anxiety, but she reminded herself of the strength inherent in her preparation. Her voice was valid. Her journey mattered. Clara took a deep breath and closed her eyes, focusing on the purpose of it all. A moment not only for herself, but for others like her. She envisioned a future where all patients could advocate for themselves without fear, where voices united resonated a symphony of change. With that thought echoing in her mind, she asked herself one final question before she slept. What would it take to transform her battle into a movement? The dawn would reveal a day filled with potential, and Clara felt that the pivotal moment was just ahead. Was she truly ready for what lay beyond that door? As the first rays of sunlight streamed through her window, Clara's pulse quickened, and with it, her determination solidified. She had prepared meticulously, yet a shiver of apprehension traced her spine as she recalled the myriad of potential responses that could greet her at Dr. Stevens's office. Perhaps today would be different. She would not let trepidation steal the resolve she had cultivated. As she dressed, Clara's reflective gaze landed on the document she crafted over the past weeks, its pages filled with her thoughts and findings, each word an act of defiance against the cloud of doubt that loomed over her. She felt an undeniable sense of empowerment, a sense that she was ready to shift how her narrative unfolded. Time raced as she rehearsed her introduction in the mirror, each practice session bringing a sense of familiarity that dimmed her anxiety. Stepping back, she caught herself questioning if her preparedness truly measured up. But deeper within, a quiet confidence sparked. This was not a mere appointment. It was a claim to her voice, a necessary step toward challenging misconceptions in the healthcare realm. After a brisk walk to the clinic, Clara paused for a moment at the door. The walls seemed to pulse with the stories of countless women and their unsung battles. Taking a steadied breath, she clutched the document tightly in her hands, willing it to transfer her energy into the space ahead. She entered. Dr. Stevens looked momentarily surprised to see her, the initial mask of professionalism slipping as he took in her assertive demeanor. His greeting was polite, but Clara's mind buzzed with the resolve that she would no longer accept indifferent interactions. She cut through the usual exchange, laying out her document with steady hands. Dr. Stevens, I'd like to discuss a few points that are essential for improving our dialogue in consultations. Her voice was clear, the words flowing with practiced poise. His brows raised ever so slightly at her assertiveness, a shift in the dynamic already palpable. As she shared her insights, Clara saw a flicker of recognition in his eyes. Perhaps a chink in the armor of indifference existed after all. She listed the common threads among women's experiences: miscommunication, lack of empathy, and the dismissive language often used. Each point was spelled out directly, inviting a conversation rather than demanding compliance. Yet, as she addressed the last point, advocacy and the need for a two-way dialogue, Clara felt a tension rise. The stakes seemed heavier now, and she anticipated retaliation from a man accustomed to dictating the narrative in a sterile office. Would he revert to defensiveness? After all, confronting systemic issues often ruffled feathers. But instead, he leaned back in his seat, contemplating her words. Clara, do you realize how important this perspective is? Perhaps I haven't fully considered how our interactions might make patients feel. It was a glimmer, an acknowledgement, but there was a hesitation, a waiting period where Clara felt her breath hitch. What would you propose moving forward? Dr. Stevens inquired, probing for further engagement, the first real question he had offered. It caught her off guard. Here was a gateway to not only present her findings, but to reshape the very way they would engage in the future. This was not merely about her. It was about all those who came to him feeling unheard. Clara seized the opportunity, her voice now layered with passion. She had no time for hesitation. Defining patient-centered conversations and proposing actionable strategies felt unnervingly bold, yet liberating. As she outlined her ideas, Clara's confidence blossomed. This was no longer just her fight. It was a rallying cry for recognition, a potential chart for change. But would Dr. Stevens be willing to embrace it? Could this interaction mark the beginning of something profound, or would it fizzle into the previous norms? The clock ticked in the background, a relentless reminder that the moment would soon shift. Clara sensed the gravity of potential transformation hanging in the air. The conversation was ebbing toward a critical juncture, and suddenly everything felt more real than she had prepared for. Yet in the depths of her mind, a new doubt began to emerge. If today could shift the paradigm in her relationship with Dr. Stevens, who else would she need to confront to see actual change? With that question, the weight of future battles pressed upon her chest, a reminder that while she may have made progress today, the journey was far from over. Could she summon the courage needed for the next confrontation? Clara's mind swirled as she processed Dr. Stevens's unexpected openness. It shook loose a cascade of ideas and emotions that had been building for too long. The prospect of genuinely reshaping what she had long perceived to be a settled dynamic ignited a sense of urgency within her. Yet, it also raised an essential question. Was she truly prepared to step into this unfamiliar territory of collaboration? She took a deep breath, grounding herself in the moment. This opportunity could redefine not just her relationship with Dr. Stevens, but also the experiences of countless women like herself who felt marginalized within clinical walls. The vision crystallized into focus, a new paradigm where patients were not just recipients of information, but active participants in their care. Moving forward, Clara began, I believe we need to implement structured feedback mechanisms after consultations. Simple post-visit forms or follow-up calls could capture feelings and reactions while they're fresh in the patient's mind. Her nerves remained tempered by the undercurrent of purpose driving her words. Dr. Stevens leaned forward, absorbed. That's insightful, Clara. A methodical approach like that could yield significant data. But would patients feel compelled to voice their thoughts honestly? Exactly, Clara replied, a spark igniting her confidence. It's essential we foster an environment where patients feel safe and valued, where their voices are heard without fear of judgment. Their dialogue deepened, spiraling into new territories Clara had only feebly dared to explore in the past. Would they promote workshops aimed at improving communication skills for healthcare professionals? What about the creation of a resource bank, materials right within the office for patients to draw upon that articulated their rights and highlighted importance in dialogues? Each proposal crystallized the vision she nurtured in silence, now growing louder through her vocalization. Yet, underlying every assertion she made was a persistent anxiety, an echo of doubt that urged her to question if advocating for these changes would just draw ire or resentment from others, possibly setting the stage for her own exclusion. Clara felt a tightening in her chest. Would this collaborative exploration be met with enthusiasm or hostility from colleagues? If she dared to challenge a system that had, in many ways, safeguarded their positions, could this bold move backfire? Dr. Stevens broke her reverie. Clara, I think your ideas could go a long way. It might be worth discussing these with our department. I'd like to see how we can make this happen. For a moment, she allowed herself to revel in the possibilities. That was the moment she realized she needed to cultivate courage, not just for herself, but for those still voiceless. Amplifying women's experiences was only possible if she broke down her fears. But then, amidst the adrenaline, a flicker of trepidation nagged at her resolve. Dr. Stevens, she ventured carefully, I would be open to broader discussions within the department, but I need to understand. What about the pushback? What if this doesn't go as planned? Dr. Stevens paused, studying her intently. Change is seldom linear, Clara. You may encounter resistance, but sometimes that's where real growth happens. Are you prepared to stand firm if necessary? Clara felt her heart pound. The question lingered in the air, heavy with potential. Did she possess the resilience to navigate uncharted waters in the pursuit of something meaningful? The weight of the moment bore down with a chilling realism. Every initiation of change carried with it risks she would no longer avoid or shrink from. I will, she resolved. A fierce determination rose. If it means transforming the conversation for women who feel unheard, I will find my strength to face the challenges ahead. But Dr. Stevens, I'll need your support, your commitment to make this collaborative. Their eyes locked, and at that moment, Clara understood that she was not just unveiling a transition in their professional relationship, but forging a partnership aimed at genuine transformation. Yet, as hope flickered against her doubts, a new realization anchored her. If her proposals gained traction within this department, it could attract scrutiny from others resistant to change. How would she handle the inevitable opposition from those protective of the status quo? Clara left the office that day with purpose ignited and questions swarming, knowing the path ahead demanded both courage and strategic navigation. Each step now unraveled new layers of complexity in her pursuit of advocacy. The future was urging her to claim it. Little did she know, the unfolding challenges would necessitate confrontations beyond the clinical walls, a battle not just for professional respect but for her own identity in this shifting landscape. As she walked to her car, a thought gripped her. Just how deep-seated were the barriers she was preparing to confront? Would she be ready for the awakening that lay ahead? Clara remained restless as the days moved forward, the weight of potential change settling heavy on her shoulders. Each morning she entered the hospital. Her once familiar surroundings felt altered, charged with uncertainty. Her role was no longer dormant. It had been ignited by the possibility of advocacy and the call for a new narrative within patient care. A narrative she was now determined to shift. In her mind, the ticking clock reverberated, amplifying her apprehensions and ambitions. There were discussions to prepare for, colleagues to persuade, and an entire system to navigate. She resolved that the ensuing departmental meeting would be the battleground for her newfound vision, a clear, structured outline of her proposals, given strength with data-driven goals. Yet in that very resolve lay another layer of trepidation. What if her ideas were dismissed as naive? What if her efforts only led to confrontation instead of collaboration, setting her even farther from the recognition she so deeply desired? As Clara prepared her notes for that crucial meeting, she felt as if she were building a bridge, one that required both resilience and strategic support. She envisioned herself standing before her colleagues, presenting not just a set of proposals, but a manifesto for change. Each point was crafted to invite dialogue rather than division, designed to resonate with the shared experiences of the medical staff. During her evening runs, where the rhythm of her feet collided with the earth, she practiced her delivery. I dream of an environment where patients walk in equipped with knowledge and self-assurance, she murmured to her own reflection in the stillness of the glass at a stoplight. The added firmness in her voice surprised her. She realized that she had not only been rehearsing her words, but also confronting the specters of doubt that had haunted her for years. As the meeting day approached, Clara sought Dr. Stevens's counsel again. What if I need a lifeline when I present? I'm ready to engage everyone, but you know their biases. Dr. Stevens met her eyes with unwavering intensity. Remember, Clara, it's not just about defending your ideas, but owning your narrative. Speak from your encountered truths. Your passion resonates loudly. You might even inspire them to reflect or question their own practices. Encouraged by his words, she internalized the truth of her lived experiences. She was not merely a voice for others. She was the embodiment of the mission she sought to foster. Her own struggles with feeling unheard and unseen within clinical walls lent authenticity to her crusade. On the day of the meeting, Clara entered the conference room with a mix of anticipation and resolve. A sea of white coats surrounded the imposing table, familiar faces mixed with unknown allies. As she stood behind the podium, unresolved nerves coursed through her. Yet, when she began to speak, she found the clarity of her intention grounding her. Colleagues, our patients often express feeling not only disempowered, but isolated. We have a responsibility to change that narrative together. She laid out her proposals, structured feedback mechanisms, workshops focused on empathy, the creation of educational resources. This was more than a list. It encompassed a vision. Silence enveloped the room. Clara's heart raced and she awaited their reactions, prepared for skepticism or applause. When the first question arose, a challenge to her approach, she steeled herself. It wasn't the hostility she feared, merely curiosity wrapped in trepidation. How do we know patients will respond positively? By creating space for their voices, Clara urged, her pulse steadying as passion kicked in. And by ensuring our commitment to listen. It's about evolution, not just compliance. With each new interaction, new doubts flared, but Clara's confidence solidified. Conversations sparked, igniting interest among colleagues that she hadn't anticipated. Amid the tension, some were beginning to connect with her vision. Clara began to draw energy from the room, adapting her responses in real time, transforming doubts into spirited discussions. Yet just as she began to sense momentum, the door creaked open further. A senior physician, known for her staunch traditionalism, stepped forward, casting a shadow over the growing enthusiasm. Clara's heart raced once again. The confrontation she had anticipated was now becoming palpable, and as she met the disapproving gaze, she felt the full weight of the resistance that lurked beneath the surface. Change is not easily embraced, the physician remarked flatly, her voice echoing with authority. And your ideas seem ambitious. Clara felt the air thicken as she steadied herself. It was now or never. She had to confront the very obstacles that had long thwarted open dialogue. As she gathered her resolve, her mind whirred with the importance of this moment. Would she fortify her stance and persist, or back down, risking not just her proposals but her integrity? She took a deep breath and thought about the countless women who had felt unheard, just as she had. The decision crystallized within her. Clara was ready to fight for change. "Change may not be easy," she countered, her voice steady, "but the empowerment of our patients is worth the struggle. Silence is not an option. If we want to serve our community effectively, we must adapt and evolve." The confrontation loomed large, her own identity and credibility hanging precariously in the balance. As Clara felt the tension rise, she could only wonder what alliances and enmities lay on the horizon. Would she bridge the divide, or find herself on the other side of a fortified wall? Little did she know that this would be just the beginning of the battles ahead. An uncharted territory where truths would be tested, alliances forged, and her very definition of leadership challenged. Clara stood poised at the podium, her heart thrumming against the silence that enveloped the room like a heavy blanket. The challenge from the senior physician, a voice deeply rooted in tradition, hung in the air, charged with the tension of years of established norms. Clara's breath caught briefly as she processed the implications of this confrontation. This was no mere debate. It was a defining moment in her career, a chance to reshape not just policy, but perspective. "Ambitious can be a good thing," Clara articulated, the words escaping in a blend of conviction and vulnerability. "Ambition is what drives innovation, and patient empowerment is the evolution we need to embrace." She sensed the wariness in the eyes of her colleagues. Some sparkled with intrigue, others narrowed with skepticism. Yet in this charged atmosphere, a greater resolve bloomed within her. Embracing the unease, she shifted her approach, tapping into her deeper intentions. Rather than making this solely about her ideas, it transformed into a dialogue about shared values, the ultimate goal of compassionate care. "If we do not listen to our patients, we deny them their agency. Isn't that contrary to our very ethos as healers?" Her voice grew firmer, as if launching a chain reaction within the room. Gradually, she noticed subtle shifts. Nods of agreement began to appear, and expressions softened. Clara pushed forward, laying out the groundwork for her proposals with unequivocal clarity, addressing the challenges head-on. "It won't be easy," she continued, eyes scanning the room. "But if we can introduce feedback loops and educational resources, we can not only enhance their experience, but reclaim their trust." The senior physician continued to scrutinize her, yet Clara perceived an opening, the flicker of contemplation on an otherwise stern face. Could this be a turning point? But there was little time to dwell. The dialogue escalated, peppered with new questions, intellectual skirmishes that tested her mettle. Someone challenged the feasibility of the workshops. How do we convince the staff to prioritize this along with their other duties? Clara recognized this as another obstacle, masquerading as a rational concern. Change requires commitment, yes, but our patients deserve our best. It can start small. Let's pilot one workshop and gauge the results. If we see improvement, we can scale. The words felt bold, yet necessary, anchoring her position as those around the table began to murmur, streamlining into a constructive debate. With every raised voice came newfound strength, illuminating Clara's path. She was no longer simply presenting her ideas. She was compelling her peers to envision their potential impact, drawing them into a collective mission. A few colleagues began throwing in their own experiences, stories surfacing about their interactions with frustrated patients, confirming what Clara had seen all along. The room, once cold, began transforming into a shared space of possibility. As the meeting progressed, Clara's focus intensified, absorbing feedback like a sponge and adapting her proposals accordingly. Yet, she remained acutely aware. This was not just about tactics. It was about emerging as a leader who facilitated change rather than dictating it. Yet amidst the ebb and flow of newfound enthusiasm, Clara stumbled onto a realization. If emotions remained unaddressed, the same loyalty she sought could easily transform into resistance, far stronger than any skepticism. She had to strike a balance, a delicate line between urgency and understanding. "Let's not rush this," she proposed carefully, gauging reactions. "Change often comes slowly, but it's vital we honor the discomfort and foster discussions further." This insight was one she hadn't fully grasped before, and she wondered if her experience as a doctor had obscured the reality that an emotional connection during this transition was pivotal. As the meeting drew to a close, Clara sensed something shift inside her. She was stepping into the role of adapter and facilitator, an unexpected evolution in her professional identity that embraced complexity rather than shying away from it. The room erupted in a flurry of discussions. Not all were in agreement, but the conversation flowed toward a constructive end. Clara felt invigorated, but also aware that every victory comes with its own challenges. Returning to her office, she reflected on the weights now resting on her shoulders. She had faced resistance and found her voice. But the journey ahead would be riddled with more profound confrontations, not only with colleagues, but with her convictions. She was committed, yet a seed of doubt began to plant. Was she truly capable of leading this charge? Suddenly the phone rang, disrupting her thoughts. "Clara?" It was Dr. Stevens. "Can you meet me in my office? We need to discuss your proposals in context with upper management." The urgency in his voice sent a jolt through her. What awaited her in that meeting could pave the way for greater support or challenge her ambitions once more. Once again, Clara found herself on the brink of another pivotal moment, one that held the potential to either solidify her role as an agent of change or expose the vulnerabilities she feared. Clara's heart raced as she made her way down the corridor to Dr. Stevens's office. Each echo of her footsteps felt amplified in the quiet of the hospital, underscoring the weight of the impending discussion. She sensed a shift in her demeanor. The earlier rush of adrenaline was now mixed with an unsettling anticipation. What would this meeting entail? Would Dr. Stevens support her vision or defer to the familiar comforts of the status quo she fought so hard against? As she approached the door, her thoughts spiraled into a series of what-ifs. What if her proposals were dismissed? What if she had overstepped some invisible line, awakening resistance that threatened her hard-won camaraderie from the meeting earlier? Inhaling deeply, she summoned her resolve, reminding herself of the transformations she had already ignited. "Come in," Dr. Stevens called from the other side, interrupting her anxious musings. Clara pushed open the door and stepped inside, her professional demeanor reasserting itself. Dr. Stevens rested his hands on his desk, his expression unreadable. "Thank you for meeting with me on such short notice," he began, gesturing for her to take a seat. The office was lined with medical journals and framed awards, a veritable testament to his years of experience. Clara sat, keenly aware of the need to make her voice count. "I've gone over your proposals," he said, leaning slightly forward, steepling his fingers. "And while I see the merit in your ideas for patient empowerment and workshops, I have concerns you need to address before they reach upper management." Clara's heart sank slightly, but she pushed through. "What specifically concerns you?" She searched his face, determined to understand and adapt, knowing the power of dialogue. "First, you need to articulate why this shift is essential, not just for patients, but for our staff and the institution's reputation. Change is always resisted, particularly when the old ways have worked so well," he emphasized, his tone firm yet constructive. Realizing he was issuing a challenge rather than a rejection, Clara mentally began drafting her arguments even as Dr. Stevens continued. "Second, consider how to engage the staff's emotions around these issues. It's not enough to present data. You have to create a narrative that connects with their experiences." "Absolutely," Clara replied, the pieces falling into place. "I can plan a detailed presentation that highlights stories of patients whose care could have been dramatically improved through feedback. Presenting relatable experiences can create a foundational belief in what we are trying to achieve." Dr. Stevens nodded slowly, his skepticism softening. That's promising, but we also need buy-in from the lead physicians. Their endorsement will be crucial for any changes to gain traction. He paused, his eyes locking onto hers. Are you prepared to navigate potential pushback from them? The question lingered, forcing Clara to confront the reality she had skirted around. The powerful senior physician she had challenged was only one among many, notably resistant to change. Could she influence their stance without alienating them? Yes, I'll find ways to include them in discussions early, so it feels less like a mandate and more like a collaboration, she affirmed slowly. Very good. You're becoming more strategic in your approach, he said, a hint of approval lighting his features. As they delved deeper into specific strategies, she found her confidence growing. Each suggestion, each counterpoint solidified her understanding of not just her vision, but the fabric of her workplace. For the first time, she began recognizing the negotiator within herself, a role she never fully embraced before. Yet, doubt still prowled in the peripheral edges of her mind. What if her ambitions led them further down a path of conflict rather than change? She pushed those thoughts aside, focusing on the immediate task ahead. As the conversation drew to a close, he positioned two files on the table, one labeled Support and the other Concerns. Get ready for your pitch, Clara. You have the potential to push this forward, but preparation is key. The intensity of his endorsement fueled her resolve, but the weight of expectations filled her thoughts. Thank you, Dr. Stevens. I won't let you down. She stood, acknowledging a newfound clarity within her. As she walked out of his office, her brain buzzed with ideas and possibilities, balancing emotional buy-in, navigating complex relationships, and finding her voice felt like disparate threads. Could she weave them into the transformation she longed for? With the next step rapidly approaching, a deeper tension ignited within her. The stakes were higher, and the path ahead loomed with uncertainty. She had a chance to turn these plans into reality, but only if she faced the deeper battles within her, both with others and herself. A sudden thought recoiled in her mind, echoing louder than ever. What if she was not just fighting for change, but for her own belief in her capabilities? Clara exhaled sharply, stepping outside to face the challenges ahead. And just then, her phone buzzed again, startling her. It was a series of messages from colleagues referencing the upcoming meeting with upper management. Glancing at the latest text, her heart raced anew. A statement demanding clarification about her authority to push these changes without broad support. Are you ready to defend your ideas, Clara, or will you allow doubt to silence your voice? The question hung in the air, just out of reach, compelling her to return to the fray once more. Clara navigated through the bustling hospital hallway, feeling the tension coiling tighter around her heart with each step. The messages from her colleagues had ignited a fresh wave of uncertainty. Doubts surfaced, multiplying like reflections in a funhouse mirror. What's more, she felt a shift, not just in the external environment, but within herself. Was she equipped to stand firm when faced with the collective skepticism of her peers? Her office loomed ahead like a sanctuary, yet this time it felt more like a battleground. As she stepped inside, she let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. The clutter of papers and files reminded her of the tangled thoughts occupying her mind. Amid the chaos, Clara knew there was clarity waiting to emerge. She had spent countless hours developing her proposals and drafting inspirational narratives to sway both her colleagues and management. Yet now, her enthusiasm felt perilously fragile. Clara sat at her desk and opened her laptop, each keystroke a mini act of defiance against the worry that clawed at her gut. If she could frame her ideas meticulously, perhaps she could turn some of those very doubts into a powerful narrative. With Dr. Stevens's guidance echoing in her mind, she began crafting her presentation. Each slide would focus not just on statistics, but on stories, the kind that would resonate and awaken empathy. Yet as she worked, an unsettling thought crept in. What if she invalidated herself by overreaching? What if the how she executed her proposals overshadowed their why? This fear paralyzed her momentarily, but she realized that acknowledgement was a step toward empowerment. Pushing through it, Clara began to explore her anxieties, feeling them morph into motivation rather than weakness. Determination ignited within her. She pulled up narratives from past patient interactions and began weaving them into her presentation. There was Belinda, an elderly woman whose late feedback had highlighted the hospital's systemic flaws. And then there was Marcus, a father whose child had faced a cascading series of miscommunications. Each individual story was not merely a statistic, they were lives deeply intertwined with Clara's purpose. If she could encapsulate their experiences, she believed it could resonate even with the most resistant colleagues. With renewed vigor, Clara decided to seek out allies, individuals in the hospital who believed in her vision and could amplify her voice. She needed to be strategic, enlisting the support of both open-minded and experienced colleagues who might sway the more entrenched members of their team. But first, she needed to confront the greatest opponent of all, her internal doubts. As she drafted calls and messages to her colleagues, the familiar rhythm of anxiety fluttered in her chest. Clara closed her eyes momentarily to silence the noise around her. She tapped into a deeper reservoir of understanding, reminding herself of her preliminary successes. Her initial workshop, the one that had drawn surprisingly enthusiastic participation, had laid the groundwork. But this was different. The magnitude of what was at stake now loomed larger than ever. Just then, her phone vibrated again. It was a message from Jenna, one of the more skeptical lead nurses. Clara felt a bead of sweat trickle down her back. The message was simple, yet its implications were daunting. "Let's discuss your ideas before the meeting. I have questions." The request felt both like an olive branch and a gauntlet being thrown her way. Clara's heart raced. Would this meeting be an opportunity to clarify her intentions, or a trap where her insecurities would be laid bare? Could this be a chance to convert a potential adversary into an advocate? She sat up straighter, recognizing the inherent conflict of emotions swirling within her. This was not just a professional battle, it was a fight for self-assertion. Uncertainty and resolve danced in intricate patterns, driving her forward. Clara began typing a response, her fingers flying over the keyboard before she could second-guess herself. She suggested they meet somewhere neutral, perhaps over coffee in the hospital cafeteria. Stepping out of the traditional confines of meeting rooms might ease the tension and yield a more honest dialogue. As she hit send, Clara felt a surge of both fear and exhilaration. She had taken a proactive step, crafting her path rather than standing passively in anticipation. In the face of doubt, she was beginning to carve her identity, not just as a change-maker, but as someone with the inner strength to foster collaborative relationships in pursuit of transformative healthcare. Yet, as she prepared for this crucial encounter, a flicker of worry transformed into an almost palpable adrenaline rush. The moment of confrontation was drawing near, a confrontation not just with Jenna, but with her own internalized fears. Clara knew she was standing at a new threshold. Would her preparations pay off, or would the weight of expectations crush her resolve? Only time would tell as Clara readied herself for the next chapter, one that would test her leadership, challenge her strengths, and ultimately reveal what she was truly capable of. Clara entered the bustling cafeteria, the smell of coffee swirling in the air, mingling with apprehension and determination. She had prepared for the meeting with Jenna, ensuring that her arguments were not just well-structured, but backed by the experiences of patients she sought to represent. As she scanned the room, she felt the electric hum of expectation thickening the atmosphere. The very setting felt like a microcosm of the larger battle ahead, both intimidating and filled with potential. When she spotted Jenna at a corner table, Clara felt a wave of nervous energy pulse through her. Her colleague wore a mask of curiosity, but also skepticism, ready to challenge the vision Clara had started to promote. This was not merely about defending her ideas. It was a moment of personal authenticity, a chance to advocate not just for systemic change, but for her own right to be heard. "Jenna, thanks for agreeing to meet with me," Clara began, pulling out her chair with purpose, instantly aware of the transformational weight behind the tagline of her project: empowering patients, transforming care. Jenna nodded, crossing her arms slightly. "I have to admit, Clara, I'm not entirely convinced. Your proposals sound lofty. Change in our department feels daunting. What's in it for us?" Clara sensed the familiar stabs of self-doubt creeping in, but she pressed forward. "I understand your concerns, but consider how those changes could enhance not just patient care, but improve staff satisfaction as well. A collaborative environment leads to better outcomes for everyone involved." As Clara spoke, memories of her earlier struggles surged, grounding her in the moment. She recalled sitting in clinical meetings, feeling diminished, powerless. But she wasn't there to relive the past. She was there to elevate the conversation. "Jenna, I've seen firsthand the impact our practices have had on patients like Belinda and Marcus. Their experiences matter, and the data supports it. By fostering a culture of open feedback, we can avoid mistakes and misunderstandings that drain our resources and compromise care quality." Clara could see Jenna's expression beginning to shift. The hard line of skepticism softened at the edges. "What makes you so sure that our staff will participate? These people are busy." Jenna's tone had lost some of its edge, curiosity replacing her initial dismissiveness. "Because I think they'll see it as an opportunity to reclaim their interactions with patients," Clara replied, leaning in slightly, emphasizing the connection. "Change often begins with a spark, a single voice. If we carry each other's voices into our discussions, it amplifies the potential for positive reform." In that moment, Clara witnessed a flicker of realization in Jenna's eyes. The barrier that initially seemed insurmountable now appeared more porous. Could it be that shared values were about to bridge the ideological divide? Jenna sighed, her shoulders relaxing slightly. "Okay, if we're willing to test this, how would you suggest rolling it out? I need to know this won't blow up in our faces." Clara felt a rush of adrenaline. They were moving toward collaboration. She outlined a strategic pilot plan, employing small feedback sessions and educational workshops that would be manageable alongside their regular duties. Each idea was crafted not merely to win Jenna's approval, but to ensure it resonated with the staff's realities and workflows. As they shifted into an open dialogue, Clara's confidence cemented further. Ideas bounced between them, nascent plans coming alive with each new suggestion. Jenna raised potential pitfalls, and Clara replied with solutions, reinforcing that adaptability was central to their goals. After nearly an hour, Clara felt the heaviness of uncertainty begin to lift. She sensed they had forged a genuine allyship. As Jenna leaned back, arms uncrossed, a smile broke across her face. "I can see your passion in this, Clara. Let's present this to the department, together." In that moment, Clara recognized the profound shift within herself. Not only was she advocating for change, but she was also leading a space for collaboration, a transformation of her own identity from a solitary advocate to a collective leader. The weight that once burdened her shoulders now felt lighter. Each conversation built upon the last, forming a network of advocacy rather than isolation. Leaving the cafeteria, Clara's pulse quickened, not with fear, but exhilaration. She had transformed a potential confrontation into a partnership. This was the beginning of her journey from invisibility to recognition. As the sun broke through the clouds outside, she saw it clearly. She was no longer just an advocate for herself. She was paving a pathway for countless others who felt unheard. She headed straight to Dr. Stevens's office, energized and armed with Jenna's willingness to collaborate. Clara was prepared for the next pivotal discussion. This was her moment to solidify their coalition. Not only was she ready to present, but she also possessed the determination to lead transformative dialogues, facing the challenges that lay ahead with solid confidence and considered competence. As Clara entered Dr. Stevens' office, her heart surged with recognition. It was time for this change to take flight. The journey was still unfolding, but she was no longer alone in her quest. With renewed assurance, she opened her notes and began discussing the day's revelations, determined to emerge not just as a voice for herself, but as a clarion call for all those seeking to reclaim their narratives in healthcare. Now was the time to inspire, to lead, and to empower. This was her moment, and she was ready to seize it. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Seriously, it makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. We want to hear from you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support, and don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.